On those hot topics, Face Off on Fox Soul starts right now.
After having a baby, she told a tale saying she found it. That story didn't add up. Now that girl is talking with Fox News' Jessica Dupek. Jess is live on Detroit's West Side. Jessica.
Group, a nonprofit reached out to us a couple of days ago saying that teen mom, she wanted to speak out, especially after her story went absolutely viral. She wants to set the record straight as to why she made up this story. And it really boils down to the fact that she was incredibly scared about what was happening and she didn't want to burden her mom.
How does this all make you feel?
I'm happy now. I was just scared at first, but.
And how old are you?
16.
Peyton Peoples didn't even know she was pregnant until it was happening on Thanksgiving.
I was laying in bed, my water had broke, and I went in the bathroom, and I had Paxton. And when let's go into depth a little more.
3 pushes into the toilet, and there he was. Peyton's mom, Kyra, was at a family member's Peyton home alone.
I cleaned him off, and then I looked up on TikTok how to cut my umbilical cord, and I cut the cord.
She was terrified and spun a tale that someone dumped the baby on the porch of her family's West Side Detroit home. He was never on the porch.
Huh? Why on my porch? That's what I kept asking. Why on my porch? Why my porch? Why my porch?
Kyra believed her daughter. They're close. Posting this on social media, and it spread everywhere. They called 911. Detroit police then brought Peyton into Children's Hospital downtown Detroit to be ruled out as the mom. That's when Peyton fessed up. Little Paxton was hers.
It was already hard for her to raise us, so it was like, that's just adding another burden on her back, and I didn't want to do that.
In this round, here's Quanell X.
Shows this story of this young girl giving birth and being afraid to let her mom know, her parent know that she had given birth to a child is a real story about joy, pain, and fear. The joy that you brought a beautiful life into the world and a child is purely innocent, the child deserves to have life. Pain because that young girl was going through so much psychological trauma and mental fear that she felt her mom would have a very negative reaction to her having a child and giving birth. Now, whether she did not know until the moment that she gave birth, I don't know. That's another discussion. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any integral details to really speak on that in depthly, but I will say that I applaud her for not overreacting out of fear and doing something that she could never, ever take back. We've all heard of stories of young teenage girls giving birth secretly to children, putting them in garbage cans, some of them killing them outright out of fear of being exposed to their parents that they were involved in sexual activity and gotten pregnant and gave birth. It's amazing that this young woman had no medical care whatsoever during the pregnancy, no prenatal care during the pregnancy, and it appears she's had a very healthy baby. As a parent, I can only imagine a teenage child coming to a parent saying, I'm pregnant. Most parents would be angry. Most parents would be upset. Well, I applaud this young woman. You didn't put that baby in a garbage can. She gave birth and the baby was in the toilet. She didn't flush that baby or try to, and she didn't harm the child. So I thank God that this young woman was able to hold on to the connection she had with that baby. Even though she created a lie about finding the baby, at least she didn't do harm to the child.
Right. There's a lot of people on social media saying negative things about the 16-year-old girl that I find to be a bit repugnant. The last story I heard that was somewhat similar was a college cheerleader at I think a Division I school. I don't remember if it was Kentucky or Kansas. Seems to me it was one of those, but is alleged to have murdered the baby after birth. And we've heard that time and time again. And this is a crime, infanticide, that is, it goes across racial and socioeconomic and all barriers, and is usually downstream from a young person or a young adult being terrified of the responsibilities of having a baby. And, I had my first child, Eve, I was 22, and it's scary, right? You think, well, how, and obviously I wasn't the one giving birth, but it's scary to think, well, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to afford this? How am I going to do this? So you can't imagine a 16-year-old living in near poverty. I think there's some details that need to be explored, right? First of all, it needs to be determined whether or not the father was also a juvenile or within whatever the state they're in Chicago, Illinois, if within the boundaries of their Romeo and Juliet laws, like 2 or 3 years, depending. And I'm not a lawyer there, so I'm not sure. But if this was an adult male that was, older, in his 20s, mid 20s and 30s, that impregnated the child, then there should most certainly be a consequence for him, right? We have to do more to protect teenagers from predators, but we don't have any idea. But that should be explored by law enforcement. What should not be explored by law enforcement or anyone else is the decision making by this child. The child, the parent child, right? Not the infant. It sounds like she, the thought that she's going to go to TikTok, and we love to harangue and hate on social media, but TikTok may very well have saved this baby's life. Like she went to TikTok as a resource to determine how she could finish the birth. Now, I find it implausible that the child was not aware that she was pregnant, right? And it does raise some concerns about how much attention the mother was paying to her, that she wasn't aware either. I mean, it seems like, she didn't seem to be she seemed to be slightly overweight, but that could have just been from the pregnancy. We don't know. And it seems like you should be more in tune with what's going on with your child. But I believe the mom. I think she had no idea. And I think a lot of parents of 16-year-olds don't even consider it in the realm of possibilities for their child, right?
This is true.
So, I think that, but this kid, this teenager saying, hey, I'm going to have this, I have this child, whether she was unaware or not, she has the child. She researches and performs, surgical duties to protect the life of the child, and then knowing that the child needs medical care, contrives an unbelievable story because she was scared, and then in fact goes and obviously confesses when confronted on the issue. I mean, I don't find I find her to be a laudable person, and it never ceases to amaze me, and I should be more cynical. But the glee that people have for condemning people online, right? And that's the toxicity, the negativity.
The most nastiest human beings.
That figured it out, that figured out how to complete the birth online. But hopefully, we talked yesterday about social media rallying around that crazy woman that got fired from Cinnabon. This is the kind of stuff that you'd like to see social media and the generous people of the world rally behind, right? Making sure that this child, because here's the thing, Illinois, obviously Governor Pritzker, Chicago, Mayor Johnson, it's a liberal state where Planned Parenthood is robust, abortion access exists, family planning care exists, right? Republicans in other states are very good about saying, no, let's not do anything, and not very good about saying, hey, I want to help this child thrive once they're born. And Democrats are very good about protecting access to abortion, even in the late trimester, and, at all costs, but also don't do a very good job, right? Chicago, you have horrible performances in public schools. You have people, they've spent so much money on migration that many people of color are being denied social services, and there's so many struggling people that live in pervasive. And hopefully this child can escape this reality, and that would be great for social media to get behind and do something for this kid.
In this case, we always tell children, don't lie to your parents. Always be honest with your parents. Right. And I want to say that I agree with that. I would rather you lie to your parents about how the baby was born and where the baby came from than for you to try to conceal it and commit crime against that child, to hide it from your parents. We can rebound from the truth. We can rebound from you having a baby. We can't rebound from taking a child's life. So any teenager that's pregnant, do what you got to do. Just don't harm that baby, and you'll find help in the long run.
After you literally stab them, you can get out of that crime. A black man was acquitted of stabbing a white man in Oregon after he claimed the attack was self-defense because the victim called him a racial slur. However, he was found not guilty of the crime on October 31st after the jury learned the victim was using racial slurs in the aftermath of the altercation. But after he was bleeding out, he decided to call him a racial slur. You know, if I just got stabbed, I'd be pretty pissed off too. Security cameras with no audio captured Edwards, the black guy, with a fixed blade knife in hand, approaching Howard, the white guy, who was just sitting on a bench. Howard immediately jumped up and pushed Edwards away because he probably felt threatened, and the two scuffled until the black guy stabbed the white guy in the shoulder. You can even see, like, he got stabbed right here, and he's running away. It looks like he's still holding it. So the body cam footage where the security officers came up showed the white guy shouting racial slurs at the black guy after he got stabbed. There is no evidence, apparently, of him saying it before he got stabbed. Before this trial, he spent 3 months in custody because they deemed he was a threat to the public due to his lengthy criminal record, including being convicted of second-degree assault for stabbing someone in 2020. This dude has a history of it. The Portland jury just...
Here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
All right, Quanell, I'm interested to hear your take on this because this strikes me as the woke madness of Portland, Oregon gone awry in the judicial system. I don't understand why the perpetrator who was found not guilty was given the opportunity to have on the jury charge self-defense as an affirmative defense to the prosecution of second-degree assault. The totality of the argument for self-defense was that it's two 43-year-old men, right? One 43-year-old man, Gregory Howard, was just sitting on a park bench, and he looks like a big, scary, skinhead white guy. But he was, there's video of this, right, that doesn't have audio. He is just sitting on the park bench minding his business, right? where Gary Edwards, who is the now not found guilty but prior felon, claimed that the guy sitting on the bench called him that awful pejorative, the racial pejorative, that magic word that is now being used. We saw it in the case here in Texas where the magic word was alleged to be the justification for a stabbing. But the video shows the defendant, the black man, approaching a guy sitting on a park bench minding his business with a knife in his hand. Then as he runs up on him with the knife, the white guy stands up, kind of shoves him away to try to get away, and he stabs him, right? And, it's very clear that after the stabbing, he called him a racial pejorative. And it seems like the bulk of the testimony was after the stabbing, he called him these not nice words. It's also very clear that this defendant has a penchant for stabbing people unprovoked. He's a violent guy, right? And the problem is that treating, and we had this big discussion about racial pejoratives and your penchant for using them, and you explained that you think it's okay because there's no history of oppression. I think it's repugnant for anyone to use it. But I don't think that we should, I think if someone stabs you unprovoked, well, you probably get to call them anything you think that will upset them, right? Because they stabbed you unprovoked. And there seems to be no argument that this victim here did anything other than sit on a park bench and have a crazy guy come up and stab him. And we've got to stop pretending that saying an ugly word is enough to try to, or in the case of Frisco, Texas, actually, and there's no evidence that was it, kill somebody, right? It's just not. In fact, here in Texas, you have to be, self-defense requires that you are defending yourself from physical harm. Not a bad word. It's absolutely insane. And this judge failed his community by allowing the jury to even consider self-defense.
Charles, when you read the quote-unquote facts of this case, it's strange all around, because it's not just strange, your narrative that you put forth, but the entire narrative surrounding the case. Allegedly, the suspect in this case, who was found not guilty, is saying that when he approached the gentleman on the park bench, he was approaching him to see if he could sell or trade his knife for something that he believed the white man had in his possession, the white guy. So this is what they said in trial. And allegedly, the white guy turned around being very physically hostile toward the guy and immediately started using the N-word when he was approached about selling this knife to him. This is the narrative that the defense put before the jury. And then after that, they get into some type of physical altercation, and the gentleman with the knife, the black guy, he stabs the white victim in this case. The man dies. And allegedly, the prosecutor said that the man only used the racial.
I don't think he died, Quanell. He's still alive.
Yes, but are using saying that this guy only used racial slurs after he was stabbed.
Right.
Well,
and those racial slurs are actually on body cam, so he definitely used it.
The body cam shows he was using slurs.
Right.
But it comes down to which story do you believe? And both men have a long, systemic, violent criminal history. Not just the perpetrator, but the victim in this case too.
Really, what's the victim history?
They both have a criminal history. Look it up. They both, and that was
well, I can tell you the stabbers, right? He stabs people. He got convicted of stabbing somebody 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
But they both have a serious criminal history.
I haven't seen anything on the victim.
What I was shocked was, do you know that the judge in this case allowed the jury to hear about this man's criminal history also? Because he took the stand and testified in this case.
Right, your history becomes admissible.
They allowed his history to come out for the jury also.
Okay.
But also, let's be clear, black people who are watching this show and every other race. This was not some all-black jury. No, it was not. Supposedly, allegedly, and supposedly what I've read, there was only one black person on the jury in that trial. Portland and the state of Oregon is not a state that's high in numbers of black people. In fact, we're less than 1% of the population in Oregon. So these were white folks who heard this man's defense and decided that his actions were justifiable and he had committed no crime.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. Portland is radically progressive. They just elected for mayor a woman that's apparently still being in her 40s, that was still being supported financially by her parents, that has no real job history, that is claims to be a socialist but champions communism. They have a penchant for a far. I consider myself a fairly liberal guy. I don't consider myself a progressive, right? And they are radically progressive, right? And of course, radical progressives, I think, far more embrace. I think, I've dealt with juries. An older black jury, as a trial lawyer, I think they would hear a guy who has a history of stabbing people who said, "Oh, I was just walking up holding my knife menacingly because I wanted to sell it to my victim." I think an older black jury would be like, "Why are you lying? No, go to prison." Right? Because most African Americans who show up for jury duty are not interested in allowing violent criminals of any race to be running around stabbing people, right? So I think, what you probably had was a largely, 20s and 30s white female naive jury that was like, so you were going to sell him your knife? Well, was that what happened back in 2020 when you stabbed that guy too? Oh, really? No, I mean, it's nonsense. It's all nonsense. He should have never got the jury charge.
But they both had a serious criminal history, Charles. And
again, I researched this pretty good, and I saw nothing about the victim. He does look like a criminal, right? I'll give you that, but I saw no evidence and no one talking about his history.
Let me encourage our viewing audience. Just Google the story and
Google. Well, tell me, what's his history? If you did it, Cornell.
The prosecutors
what's his history?
The prosecutors were against this man's history being allowed to be entered, but once he took the stand and testified, the jury was allowed to hear it. What I'm saying is, you would think, hearing this story on the surface, that this was some all-black O.J. Simpson type jury.
Well, I think only a racist
get away. These are white people.
O.J. wasn't found not guilty because of a black jury. He was found not guilty because the police were caught lying.
You would think
by a very smart attorney.
In this case was black folks. No, we were not on that jury like that. These were white people.
Well, I didn't say that. You're the one that brought up the race of the jurors.
I will say this. They just sent a message. If you're a racist, you better get your raggedy, rusty behind out of Oregon. You better not be up there with that racism in that city.
I think the message
if you're racist in that city, you in trouble. Because if you use the N-word and somebody kill your rusty, raggedy behind, they ain't going to jail.
I think the message that we're hearing, and we're not just hearing it in Oregon, I mean, obviously up in Dallas, that if you do something horrible, that you can, as an African-American, that a first line of defense for defense attorneys would be to allege, he said this naughty magic, this awful magic, rude, pejorative, right?
Which case
now, again, you believe that you can say pejoratives because history absolves you of that. What?
Which case is that in Dallas?
Well, the stabbing case.
You mean the Frisco, Texas case?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Carmelo
Dallas,
Anthony case.
Yeah, where the monster Carmelo Anthony and you pushed all these lies saying that this kid deserved to get killed.
He wasn't bothering nobody. He was minding his own business.
Okay, actually, everything seems to appear to support the narrative that Mr. Anthony went to school with a knife and was looking for an altercation. I mean, look. Well, actually, there seems to be no evidence that he ever assaulted.
He tried to make him move from under the tent.
Also, his brother did that. It all comes down to he said words, right? That's be the focus now as new videos emerge.
He said more than the
that
word.
He said a bad word.